last time you was punished for some sort of disobedience in your life? Maybe you had got a speeding ticket. Maybe it was a seatbelt you wasn't wearing. Maybe you showed up late for school. Maybe you was disruptive in class. Maybe your spouse or your loved one asked you to take out the trash, but you just completely forgot. No matter what kind of disobedience it is in the eyes of God, disobedience is still sin. And today I would like for us to discuss in 1 Samuel in chapter 2 the life and times of the man named Eli, and how Eli and his family's disobedience caused God to have to take action. And today I would like to ask you this simple question: is your promise in jeopardy? Hello there, and I'd like to welcome you to AppliedGrace.com, where we take biblical principles and we help you to apply them to your everyday life. And today I would like to begin our series in studying the book of Samuel, and we're going to go over the whole book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, and we're going to go over each chapter, and we're going to start to pull out some of the more important principles that are within the scriptures. We're going to kind of look at them, make some references to them, and see how it is that we can be able to apply them to our everyday lives, so that we can begin to learn more and more about the Bible and the life and the fulfillment that God wants us to have in our own lives as well. But as we start the book of Samuel, we see that this woman named Hannah had been barren, and she had not had a child, and so she continued to go to the temple, and she continued to give her offerings, and she continued to ask God. She wailed and she cried and she moaned and she pleaded to God for him to give her a child, and he answered her prayer, and he gave her what we will later discuss as a divine promise, and he gave her the son Samuel, who is the one that we're going to be talking a lot about here in these next coming up weeks, is the prophet Samuel. And so as we begin in the in the second chapter of Samuel, we're going to see her prayer of rejoicing to God, and we're going to see how she had not lost, even in a time when even the people, the priests, the people of Israel, God's chosen people, had turned to pagan worship. They were worshiping the gods of Baal. They were worshiping different other gods as well, and this was a very trying time for the Israelites in that they had started allowing their own desires, their own sins to start to control their life. And what was beginning to happen was they was beginning to fall away from God's promise that they were in the promised land, but let's notice they were beginning to fall away from or out of the promise of the land that he had given them. And so we're going to see here that after Hannah has given this some 11 verses of amazing testimony of her faith and her and how she is giving praise to God for her son Eli, and ultimately we notice that she had actually even gave her son up to the offering. She offered Samuel back to God, as allowing him to go into the family of Eli and to begin his life as a priest, so that Samuel would be ministering before God in the family of Eli. And but we see the part that I want for us to really begin to look at is as we get into the 12th verse of the second chapter of 1 Samuel, we read this. We read that Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Maybe you're surrounded by some people like that in your life. Have you ever looked around and thought, man, I seem to be doing the right thing and I never can get ahead, and those people over there are doing the wrong thing and they're continuing to get ahead. They've got a nice house, they've got a nice car. I mean, they eat the choice meat, they eat at the best restaurants, they go to the best church. But when you actually look at their life, when you get below this this wall. And maybe you have a wall up. Maybe there's a time when you've seen somebody else that had a wall up. The things that have happened in our past, oftentimes we build walls up. We stack up these pretty little blocks to try to keep people from getting in. But what really happens is, not only do we keep people from getting in, but we keep our love and our joy and our happiness and all these things from getting out into the world. And so basically, when we sing the little song, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I can't let it shine if I've got this wall built up. But what I wanted to look at is these sons of Eli were scoundrels. And as we go on down to verse 17, it says, the sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. Notice what they were really doing was, as priests, they would take the offerings of the individuals as they would come to the temple, and they would offer it to God. And so what these priests were doing was, what these sons of Eli were doing, they were taking the choice parts of the offering that was to be given to God as the first fruits, right? We're to give not from the bottom of our account. We're not to give from the bottom of our tithe. We're to give from the top, from the best, with unblemished. Just like Hannah gave the best that she had, the only thing that she had, the thing that she had asked God for the most, she gave back to God. Are you willing to give back to God the thing that you are holding on the most? Because another principle we're going to talk about is that the things that you hold on too tightly to, you're liable to lose. And so as we look through these, this life of these sons, we see that they were taking not from the men or from the Israelites, they were taking from God. And this is what God seen and held them in contempt. He held them in this view that they were scoundrels. And so not only did God see them that way, but so did the people around them. I can give a reference to you on this one, as we can go all the way back to the very beginning of scriptures, and let's go to Genesis. And you may recall two brothers here, Cain and Abel. And as we're going to catch up here in Genesis in chapter 4, we're going to be in verse 6. Let's go to verse 3. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Verse 6. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Let's look there. Is the same situation going on. If we remember, Cain and Abel, Cain winds up killing his brother and winds up having to be banished out into the land. And this is oftentimes we get angry, we get jealous. Other people bring a better offering or have a better something to give to God. But even if we go back and we look at the life when Jesus was alive, if we remember the lady that came in after all of the people that were in the temple would come in, and they would clang their coins in the bottom of the bucket so that you could hear it. And as this little lady comes in and she gives her offering of the two coins, and it was all that she had, and Jesus says, this woman here has given more than the rest. And so this is, it's not the offering that we bring, it's the motives in our heart. It's not that we're giving out of compulsion. It's not that we're giving out of a requirement that we have to give, but we're giving it because we love God and because we want to give back. Not what we have left over, but the first, the top, the best of everything that we have. And so here we see that the sons of Eli were wicked. And it goes through, and as you read through the second chapter of Samuel, it continues to go back and forth in showing us how they are wicked in the things that they do. Now let's look, as you just go right from verse 17 into verse 18, it says, "But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod." Check this out. You have Samuel, who is in the house of Eli, who is ministering at the tent of the tabernacle, where the Ark of the Covenant would have been. We know that the sons of Eli were corrupt. Now here is this child who has been put into this corrupt and deceitful and manipulative and twisted out view of what it is to minister to God, but he doesn't become corrupted because God was raising him up on his own. Let's notice that a lot of times we get caught into this sense that we have to do this, we have to study this, we have to go to this school, we have to go to that state, we have to be a part of this church, we have to be a part of that community, we have to be friends with that person, or we are not who we want to be. And one of the hardest things for me as I became a Christian was that I have always been in the world, and so recently, as I came to belief in Jesus and putting my faith in Him, I still struggle with this wanting to please men, wanting to please other people, wanting to do things pleasing to myself, and really, it's this identity situation that I have going on, and so I have an identity crisis. Even though I am a born-again Christian, I don't always, that's not my identity. My identity is in who I am in my external. And so I could imagine, you could see these sons of Eli who were all wrapped up in the world and of the women and of the whatever they could get their hands on, they were entitled to it. And so they felt that God wasn't worthy of these things. They held God in contempt. And so we notice that God's seen that as a very, very wicked sin. Let's notice as we get on down into the last part there of chapter 2 and about 25, he says here, chapter 2, verse 25, he says, this is Eli, who has actually now came to his sons and has asked them, he's now confronting them about their sins. And he says, if one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. And then we notice there, we see the sons of Eli and their wickedness, and then that very next verse we see, and the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. Let's notice, if we do what is right, if we do the right things, our boss will like you, your spouse will like you, your friends will like you, those people around you will like you. We sometimes put this emphasis into wanting to please others so much that we can sometimes fall into this sin trap, and then we don't please anybody. But if we're pleasing God, if we seek first the kingdom of God and all of His righteousness, all of the other things will be given. All of these other things that we desire, that God desires for you, to have friends and to have all these things, is going to all fall into place. And so the principle that I want to talk to you about today is, as I first studied, we talked a little bit about in the beginning, is that the things that you hold on to the most are oftentimes the things that you're asked to give up. Don't hold on too tightly to things. We notice here, Eli did not want to rebuke his children. He did rebuke them, but even in the rebuke, he didn't follow through, because I feel he was in the sin. He was getting the effects of the things that were going on, and he was, getting a benefit. So he rebuked them, and he told them that they needed to stop it, but they did not. Now we're going to see at verse 27 that now Eli, God has stopped talking to Eli. Not that God has stopped talking to Eli, but Eli has stopped hearing from God because of his immense amounts of sin that had been going on in his life. He stopped confronting God. He stopped asking God for his assistance. He's just kind of going along the motions. He's just feeling his way by his own emotions and his own feelings and his own beliefs. And so we see that God had to send somebody, and it even says, that now a man of God came to Eli. And we're thinking, wait a minute, Eli is a priest here. Eli is a prophet and a priest, and he is working for God, but God has to send a man of God to him to tell him, to guide him, and to try to counsel him into what God was wanting him to know, into speaking to him audibly. And we're going to read in verse 30 of 1 Samuel chapter 2, and we're going to get into the meat of the real principle that I want to discuss here. And we're going to be, verse 30 says, "Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that members of your family would minister before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me, those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained." Today, is your promise in jeopardy? Is your promise in jeopardy? I want to talk to you about two kinds of promises. God gives his children the promise. First, the promise of salvation. Let's look in the book of John, and probably one of the most well-known and most versed scriptures that there is. And we're going to be in John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever shall believe in him shall never perish, but will have everlasting life." And we look, that is a promise. That is a divine promise that was given to every single person alive, past, present, future. That is a promise that if you believe in the Son of God, if you believe in Jesus, you will not be lost to the evil one. You will not be lost or perish and go to the place of eternal damnation, but you will be saved. You will be accepted into the family of God. You will now be, your identity will change from this to this, from worldly to heavenly, from Christian. You see where I'm coming from? You have a new identity in Christ, and that is non-conditional. It's unconditional. What I mean by unconditional is you have to believe in Jesus, but the condition is for everybody, right? And that whoever believes will not perish but have everlasting life. So what I'm trying to help you to distinguish between these two is that if we look here, he says, "I promised that members of your family would minister before me forever." God promised Eli and his family that all of his family would minister before him, but he didn't promise them that no matter what their sins were. Do you understand that? There may be a doctrine of eternal security or not. You don't believe it, you do believe it. I'm not here to argue those types of theology, but what I would like for us to understand is you can take a 10-year-old that gives his life to Christ or a 80-year-old person that gives their life to Christ and may die hours later. They're both going to go to heaven. Okay, it's not based on their works. It's based on their faith. It's based on their beliefs. That man laying in a hospital bed at 80 years old, never believed in God, doesn't have time to go to an altar and give himself to God. He just gives himself to God there. He accepts Jesus into his life, and he accepts his forgiveness. He accepts his, his resurrection, and he believes in those things, and he's saved. And so I want us to understand that it's not conditional on what we do, but what we believe. But now let's look here again. We have this promise here, we notice, is conditional. Because if Eli doesn't uphold the seat, the job of priest, of high priest, if he does not do the job in accordance to the will of God, then God has this right, as he would, to withdraw his promise. Let's look at another one back here. This isn't the only one. These are all throughout the scriptures. We're going to look in the book of Joshua even. And we see here in Joshua chapter 1, verse 7, he says, "Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the left or to the right, that you may be successful wherever you go." You see, it's a conditional promise. If you keep my law that my servant Moses gave you, you don't go from the right or to the left, then you will be successful wherever you go. This is a conditional promise. It says it again, "Keep the book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." Look at that. That's a conditional. If you keep the law of Moses, if you keep the law, then you will be prosperous and successful. So today, what I want to do in an overview, I want you to look at yourself. Ask yourself, has God given you a promise? Has God promised you that you're going to do this? Maybe God has called you into this profession. Maybe God has called you into this ministry. Maybe God has given you the Spirit and has given you the ability to, through your spiritual gift, to teach Sunday school, or to want to sing songs in the church, or to go out and to talk to people in the streets. Maybe God has called you to do one of these things. What I want you to understand today is, can your sin keep God or cause God to withdraw his promise from you? Yes, it can. So today, I would ask you, in your life, in yourself, what are some of the things? Are you expressing God's gift? Are you using God's gift for other people? Are you using God's gift to bring more people into the loving relationship of Jesus Christ? Are you using your gift in your church? Are you using your gift in the family of Christ? Are you using the things that God has given you? Are you giving your tithe? Are you giving your time? Are you giving your talent? Brothers and sisters, I encourage you today, please stop and take a look at yourself, take a look at your life. Do not be like the sons of Eli and have God come down and withdraw his promise from your life. If you are getting content out of these videos that you're enjoying, I advise you to please hit the like button below. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you would like updates on the content as it comes live, hit the bell down below. We'll send you some emails. We'll get you some updates on your telephone or your tablet or your computer or wherever you're at in the world to let you know that this content has gone live. And as always, I would encourage you to continue staying focused in your faith and continue staying strong in your church. And may God bless the rest of your day.